Hi, I'm Movie Man. I'm an octopus who reviews movies, and today's review is going to be on. You may have noticed I'm using a different octopus for today. Well, don't worry about ordinary Movie Man. He's all right. But I'm actually his brother. Yes, Movie Man actually has a brother. Would you believe it? So, yeah, I just figured that for today's review, we would let ordinary movie man have a bit of a break. And so now his brother is going to take over for today's review. But yeah, anyway, today's review is on Captain America: Brave New World. Um, yeah, so with this movie now. This film looked interesting enough. I mean, I know the MCU has kind of been like on a downward spiral. Like since Endgame. I know most people agree with that. But like, I still think they can put out like a solid movie. And like, to be fair, Captain America: Brave New World didn't look all too bad from the trailers. I mean, I only just watched the Falcon and the Winter Soldier series, in preparation for this movie, and I thought that show was okay, and like, I thought it did an alright job of, setting up Sam Wilson as the new Captain America. Um, but yeah, now we have his first movie as Captain America with Brave New World. As I said, I thought from the trailers this movie looks good enough. Now of course I am aware that this movie seemed to have a bit of a troubles production. Yeah, I am aware that there was actually quite a few reshoots that they had to undergo for this film because apparently like there were earlier versions of the movie that didn't do very well with test audiences, so they had to like go back and kind of reshoot a lot of it. But yeah, now we have our like finished film and here out now in cinemas. I went to see the movie there for myself. And yeah, having seen Brave New World for myself now, what did I think of it? Honestly, this film was a bit of a mixed bag. Yeah, I know alright that the reviews for this one were kind of mixed. Like, I know this only got like I think a 51% on Rotten Tomatoes. And yeah, to be honest, like I kind of have to agree with that. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't think this movie is like just completely bad. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, there is good stuff in this film, but I just think overall, like as a movie goes, it's not great. Um, yeah, but anyway, actually getting further into my thoughts on the movie. First off, in terms of cinematography, now to be fair, the cinematography in the movie is quite good. Now, that shouldn't really be like too much of a surprise, given that obviously this is an MCU movie and MCU films generally tend to be shot pretty well, but overall, like, I thought this movie was well shot. Like, given that, like, of course, this is an action superhero movie, obviously, there's going to be a lot of, like, action scenes in this film, and I mean, to be fair, I did think, like, some of that action sequences were pretty well shot. There were some decent shots in this, like, especially there was this one, like, fight scene in the climax that was pretty well shot, and also there's an action sequence that, like, takes place, like, in the air when, like, Sam and Joaquin are having to, like, face off against, like, all, like, these missiles, and, like, there's all these fighter jets, and I will say I do think all, like, that sequence is pretty well shot, like, in terms of, like, how, we get, like, all these scenes of these characters flying and stuff, I thought, like, all, like, that aspect was well done, but overall, I have to say, the cinematography in the movie was pretty good. Now, in terms of the film's editing, yeah, this was definitely more of a mixed bag, to be honest. Cause, like, don't get me wrong, this movie isn't, like, really poorly edited. Like, I mentioned about some of the action scenes, like, as well as there being some, like, decent shots, but, like, I think overall they're edited well enough. Like, I have to say though, like, because I mentioned earlier, that, this movie did undergo a fair amount of reshoots, and yeah, throughout the movie, it's actually pretty obvious when, certain scenes have been reshot. Like, all throughout this movie, you can kind of clearly just tell, when certain scenes have been reshot. Because, like, yeah, they don't really do great, like, with the editing in that respect. But yeah, like, honestly, like, yeah, no, I just feel like, especially, like, with, like, kind of some of the conflicting tones and, like, some of these conflicting storylines, overall, I just feel like, the movie could have been better as this is in that regards. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not, like, a horribly edited movie, but yeah, I didn't really think it was particularly great either, so yeah, the editing in this movie was kind of a mixed bag. In terms of the film's pace, now, this movie, for an MCU film, it's not, like, too long. The movie overall has a runtime of an hour and 58 minutes. So, yeah, this movie is, like, literally just under 2 hours, which still might be long enough, but, like, it isn't, like, too long for an MCU film. Like, I'm pretty sure this is kind of towards, like, the shorter end of the MCU. But, like, with the way the movie is paced, like, honestly, it kind of feels a bit uneven because, like, there's times where it kind of feels to be, like, kind of generally paced for an MCU movie, but there's also times throughout this where, like, it kind of just feels like, the movie is being paced, like, a bit too quickly to where, like, it just feels like we haven't exactly, like, gotten, like, the proper builds up that, certain scenes needed, and, like, I know at times it just felt like the movie was kind of going, like, a bit too quickly to where, things just didn't really feel like all that satisfying. Like, it's not like a horribly paced movie, but yeah, it's definitely like probably one of the weaker MCU films that I've seen when it comes to pacing. But yeah, overall, I have to say the pace in this movie wasn't terrible, but definitely could have been better, to be honest. Now, like, in terms of the sounds and music, like, I will say the movie does have some pretty decent, like, sound effects, which, kind of should be a given, like, with this being an MCU movie. Like, to be fair, there are some pretty solid sound effects that we do here in this film. But they're not like absolutely amazing or some of the MCU's best, but like some of the sounds that we hear during some of the fight scenes and like particularly during like some of the flight scenes that we see, there's some pretty good like sound work in there, and even like some of the scenes like with the Red Hulk character, like some pretty good sound effects in there. Yeah, so the sound work is alright. In terms of the film's music, it's not terrible, but it's not great either. Like I said, the movie doesn't have a terrible score, but yeah, I know, it just feels like kind of generic for an MCU movie. Like, again, it's not horrible. There's one or two decent tracks in there, but for the most part, it's nothing really noteworthy. It's kind of just forgettable, to be honest. So, yeah, overall, the sound and music in the movie was okay, but it's particularly some of the music I felt just could have been a lot better. In terms of the visuals, like I have to say the visuals in this movie were honestly a real mixed bag. Like I mean, like don't get me wrong, there were some visuals that didn't look too bad. Like in terms of the design of the Red Hulk, like he honestly didn't look too bad. Now there was one or two times I'll admit where he did look a bit goofy, but for the most part, I actually didn't think he looked too bad. But in terms of like where my problems lie with the visuals, yeah, there were times throughout this movie, where again you could clearly tell that these scenes were reshot because we get like a bunch of green screens at certain points, and oh my god, do they look like so obviously. There was a fair few times throughout this movie where I could clearly just notice like some very obvious green screens. So like yeah, the visuals weren't really the best in that department. Like overall, like the visuals aren't like absolutely terrible. To be fair, there have been worse visuals in like the later MCU movies for sure, but like even then, like some of the visuals in this did look very kind of ganky, very gooky, as I said, especially with just some of the green screens. Yeah, overall, that definitely could have been better. Now, in terms of the characters and the acting, obviously starting with our main protagonist, Sam Wilson, aka Captain America, the new Captain America, obviously after Steve Rogers. And like I will say, Sam is a pretty solid protagonist. Like I will say, to be fair, he does carry the movie, I do feel, at times. I don't think he makes like a good Captain America, and like he has an arc in this movie of like how like with him obviously being the new Captain America, that like he like feels like maybe he might not like be able to live up to the legacy of Steve Rogers, obviously like because unlike Steve, he hasn't taken the super soldier serum. But like honestly, to be fair, he made for a solid protagonist. But like, even then, I just wish the movie focused a bit more on that aspect of his character. Like, because we got a bit of it, but I don't think we got quite enough. Now, granted, maybe they could set this up for a future movie. But yeah, I mean, he was okay. I will admit, Anthony Mackie, he did a very good job in this movie. Like, he gave a good performance, and I thought he led the movie well enough. But yeah, I just wish like the movie gave us like more to work with for his character. Now, I don't really want to get too much into some of the other characters in the film, but like, honestly, a lot of like the side characters in the film, I frankly just didn't really care about all that much. Like, for example, Joaquin Torres, who is of course the new Falcon. I thought he was okay in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier show. In this movie, no, I just feel like I didn't really care enough for his character. Like, there was, I think, one joke from him that, like, kind of got a bit of a laugh out of me, but, like, yeah, I don't know, I just feel like I could have cared more for his character. Like, there's also, this character named Ruth, who is, like, this agent that works for the president. Now, this character is actually pretty controversial for reasons which I'm sure a fair few watching this probably know about, but if you're not aware of it, then I'd say maybe, just go look it up yourself. But ignoring kind of real life stuff though, and just in terms of her character, I just frankly did not care for her, honestly. I just found her to be incredibly bland. Like, there's like one or two other side characters in this movie that I don't really care much for, and like, it just seems like there's a bit like too much characters in the film to where like, I just wasn't able to care enough. I will say one character especially in this film that I was really disappointed with was Sidewinder. He's basically like kind of the film's secondary antagonist. He's like obviously the leader of the Serpent Society. Like clearly, he was added into the film during the reshoots, and boy, you can just tell. Because, like, obviously he's played by none other than Gustavo Gosfring himself, Mr. Giancarlo Esposito, who is a really good actor, like he does great in terms of like playing these really villainous characters. But like honestly, he really was just not given much to work with. Don't go into this movie expecting him to be in it for a lot, because I can tell you he is like barely in this movie. I think like maybe 5 minutes. Yeah, he's not in this movie much. Like, hopefully, like, maybe we could see his character again in the future projects. We get more of him, but Yeah, there wasn't enough Giancarlo Esposito in this movie for sure. Like the only side character who I did kind of like was Isaiah Bradley, because to be fair, I did like his character a lot in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier show, because I do find him a really interesting character with like his backstory and stuff. And like there's a whole thing with his character in this movie because obviously he gets brainwashed and he gets framed for like trying to assassinate the president. Like I did find that aspect of the movie quite interesting, but like I know I just feel like it was a missed opportunity that we didn't get to see more of him. We didn't get to see, how that, kind of impacted his character and stuff. I just wish we got to see more of it. Um And like, of course, also like, the other kind of really big character who we have in this movie is Thaddeus Ross, who, of course, in this film he ends up becoming the president. Um, like I will say his character actually wasn't too bad. Like I found his character to be kind of interesting enough because the movie did dedicate a fair amount of screen time to his character and like. To be fair, I found his character to be interesting enough. Like, maybe it could have been executed a bit better, but I thought from what we got of it, it was good enough. And of course, he's played in this by none other than Han Solo and Indiana Jones himself, Harrison Ford, who of course takes over the role from William Hurt, who originally played Thaddeus Ross, but of course he unfortunately passed away in 2022, and so Harrison Ford had to take over the role. Like I said, he's a solid character, and Harrison Ford does do well enough in the role, I feel. So I thought he was pretty solid. The last character who I'm going to talk about is kind of the main villain of the movie, Samuel Stearns, who, of course, in this film, he becomes the leader. And this is literally the first time that we've seen him since the Incredible Hulk movie from all the way back in 2008, which was, of course, the second MCU movie. But in terms of the leader as a villain, now, don't get me wrong, I mean, now I know of course he's played once again by Tim Blake Nelson, who, to be fair, Tim Blake Nelson, he does do very well in the role. Like, he does well in terms of, like, actually trying to make his villain, like, intimidating and stuff. But I'm going to be honest, I just couldn't really get that invested in the leader as a villain. Like, as much as Tim Blake Nelson tried his best, I just couldn't get with him as a villain, and like, we do get to see what he looks like, and without giving it away, I just wasn't really a fan of, his design. I just found it kind of goofy, to be honest. But like, yeah, he was kind of a letdown, so, overall, the characters weren't exactly amazing. Like, don't get me wrong, there were some solid characters, there was some solid acting in the movie. Like, I think Anthony Mackie, Carl Lumbly, and Harrison Ford were definitely the standouts when it came to the acting in this film, but like, overall, I just feel like, it could have been better and stuff. So, yeah, overall, the characters were a bit of a letdown. Some of the acting was okay, but yeah, it just could have been better, if I'm going to be honest. Now, in terms of the movie's plot, like, I just feel like the movie kind of finds it a bit hard to, like, pick a certain direction, because, like, the movie's trying to be kind of more of, like, a political thriller, but, like, it's also still trying to be like a superhero movie at the same time. Like I was only gonna notice that like in this movie there's not like as much humor. There is still a bit of humor in the movie, but I do feel it is kind of toned down a bit, which I don't really mind to be honest, because like I definitely do think, especially as of recent, some MCU humor can get a bit out of hand. So I don't mind them toning it down a bit, but like yeah, I don't know. It's just like I feel like in terms like trying to make it a political thriller, but also like trying to make it a superhero movie, they really just couldn't done a better job with it. Because clearly there's just a lot going on in this movie. Like there's all this different stuff happening with all these characters and all these plot points. And like not to mention also the movie's trying to like carry over like plot points from other like previous MCU movies like The Incredible Hulk and Eternals, kind of trying to like connect some of these dots a bit, but like I don't know, I just feel like they could have done a better job with it. That's not to say it's all bad, because like to be fair, as I said, there's some nice action scenes, and like I do think it can be alright at times. There is like some cool scenes in this, and like I said, it's not like really bad, but I just feel like they just could have done better with it in terms like finding a proper direction to go in terms of like how they execute all this stuff and how they bring it all together. I just really think they could have done a better job with all that. So overall, I just think the plot of the movie could have been better. And yeah, in terms of the narrative structure, and this is kind of where like a lot of the problems with the movie lie, because we have like a bunch of different stuff going on. We have like like this whole kind of mystery plot with like the leads are kind of brainwashing people, and Sam's trying to figure it all out and stuff. But like we also have like other stuff going on, like with the celestial Tiamat from Eternals and how they find adamantium and stuff, and like I just feel like in terms of how they connected all these things together, they just really could have done like a better job with it. Like as I said, it wasn't like horrible or anything, but like it just felt a bit directionless at times. It kind of feels like it just needed to kind of stick to something, because like the movie's trying to be a political thriller and a superhero movie at the same time. I just don't think it entirely works. I just think they could have done a better job with connecting it all together and just making everything a lot more like interesting, to be honest. Like again, it wasn't absolutely terrible, but they just really could have done a better job with it. So yeah, overall I'd say the narrative structure isn't great either. So yeah, overall, I don't hate Captain America Brave New World, but I can't say I was really a huge fan of it either. Like, don't get me wrong, the movie does have a fair few things going for it. Like, there's some cool action scenes, there's good cinematography, there's some good, sound effects, and there's some decent characters, and there's some solid performances in it. And to be fair, I do think the movie does have some interesting ideas, but I just feel like in terms of how they kind of execute everything, they just could have done a better job with like finding a proper direction for it all. And as I said, some of the side characters I also just couldn't really get invested in. Like it just wasn't like paced very well or edited very well. Clearly, this movie did suffer a bit from the reshoots. Like the reshoots, I felt definitely kind of hurt the movie a bit it feels like, don't get me wrong, I don't think this movie is bad per se, but yeah, for me it definitely could have been better. So yeah, overall, as like our first superhero movie of the year, this isn't great. Now, don't get me wrong, it's certainly not as bad as, the superhero movie we got last February, but yeah, with that being said, this movie isn't exactly amazing. Now, of course, later on in the year, we have Thunderbolts and the Fantastic Four coming out. Honestly, I do think we're gonna, step it up from there. But yeah, hopefully they do improve on this one, because for me, I think this is honestly one of the weaker MCU entries that I've seen. And I mean, don't get me wrong, if you just want, kind of just, just a fun, kind of entertaining, superhero Marvel movie, it's one that, you can kind of just, turn your brain off, just kind of enjoy it, as a popcorn movie. But yeah, overall, as far as the MCU goes, this is definitely not up there as one of their best. So yeah, with all that said, I'm going to give Captain America Brave New Worlds a 5 out of 10. So with that, I'll see you guys next time, and bye.